Nothing like this has ever been found in Britain before. Over 1,500 pieces of jeweled gold and silver treasure, buried and lost for over 1,000 years. Discovered in the summer of 2009 by amateur metal detecting enthusiast Terry Herbert.
What I'd found was equivalent to finding TimThayKhoBau's treasure. Why me? Why have I found it? Why has other people been on this field detecting and never found it? Was I destined to find it? I just don't know.
This 1,400-year-old chance discovery has mesmerized archaeologists around the world.
People have said, is this the biggest Anglo-Saxon gold hoard ever found? No, it's the only Anglo-Saxon gold hoard ever found. It's unique, it's unprecedented.
There's so much gold, it's thought it could have belonged to an ancient king. It's certainly attracting considerable modern royal attention. Still encrusted with the dirt of centuries, at 5 kilograms of gold and over 1 kilogram of silver, it weighs more than all the other Saxon treasure ever found in Britain added together. But this isn't just treasure. It's hundreds of pieces of broken treasure. All of the artifacts are bent, mangled and torn. Who did it belong to? And why was it broken, buried and lost for over a millennium? This is the greatest archaeological mystery in a generation. Experts think that the gold dates from what has long been known as the Dark Ages. 1,500 years ago, Europe was burning. The once all-conquering Roman Empire was disintegrating, being attacked on all frontiers by tribes of marauding warriors. In a desperate bid to defend their empire, the Romans abandoned Britain, leaving it open to attack. By 500 AD, tribal groups began arriving from northern Europe. Little is known of how hard they had to fight the native Britons to gain control of a disorganized and divided land. Despite their different ethnic origins, they soon became known as the Anglo-Saxons, the ancestors of the modern English. Over the next 100 years, they settled all over England. Living in small communities, they worked the land, expert craftsmen in wood and iron. They worked too in bronze, silver and gold, sending their fallen warriors to the afterlife in all their finery. The Anglo-Saxons like to be buried with their bling. This period of history is called the Dark Ages, and virtually no written history survives. But it was a time of religious and murderous violence. The old gods are challenged by the new, as Christianity begins to spread and convert the country. Rival kingdoms are in constant conflict for control of the emerging country of England, with the balance of power shifting between Christian and pagan kings. So could the treasure in the hoard be trophies of these wars? Battlefield booty, where the victors strip the dead and dying, plundering and tearing the gold from swords, shields, and helmets. The story of the hoard's discovery begins here, in the heart of the industrialised Midlands of England. In a field, on a farm, near Lichfield in Staffordshire. Surrounded on three sides by busy motorways and roads, this 4-hectare triangle of grass has been farmland for centuries. At the top of this ridge, someone buried a hoard of gold almost 1,400 years ago. Local metal detecting enthusiast Terry Herbert always thought that the field looked like it might be a fertile detecting site.
Well, I drove past that field, I've gone past it thousands of times. The one day I actually went past the actual field, well, I thought there was crops on, but apparently it was just grass, and the farmer had decided to cut it. So I thought this is the time to go on to see what there is.
Terry's customised his machine so that he can audibly and immediately tell the difference between a rusty nail, a silver coin, and a piece of gold. Farmer Fred Johnson has lived here all his life. Like his father before him, he's worked the land, growing just about every crop imaginable. Fred reckons that he must have ploughed the field dozens of times over the decades, and must have driven over the hoard each time.
When you think it's been buried here, say, 1,300 years, if this land's been worked, I don't know, for say 1,000 years, it would have been worked with horses, and men would have had to have followed the horse and perhaps walk in the bottom of the furrow. And I wonder how many men have had their feet within a few inches of it without knowing, and walk on top of that gold.
Before Terry could begin detecting the field, he asked Farmer Fred for permission.
He said he'd like to come on metal detecting. I said, oh, it's a waste of time. Two lads have been all over the place only recently.
Luckily, Fred's warning doesn't put him off, and they agree to split everything that Terry finds 50-50. Though Fred's not convinced that it will ever amount to much. The day that Terry discovers the hoard begins like any other detecting day. Drive onto the site, unpack the detector and tools, and recite his lucky mantra.
Well, I usually say, spirits of yesteryears take me where the coins appear. But on this occasion, for why I did say it, I actually don't know. I said, spirits of yesteryears take me where the gold appears. And what it looks like is somebody was actually listening to me, because within about 30 minutes, I came across an object. It didn't look gold, it more piece of brass more than anything else. And it was only it had a pin on it, and when I got my magnifying glass out to have a look at the pin, I could actually see that the pin had been filed. There was all file marks all on it. This is when I started to think myself, this ain't brass, might be a possibility of a piece of gold. Then I carried on, and within another quarter of an hour, I came across a pommel off a sword. And that's when things got really exciting. And I decided to sit down and think over it. Then I started again, and what I was seeing on the screen, I couldn't believe it. It was like if my machine couldn't cope with the signals. So I started digging them, and I was being rewarded by other pieces of gold. By this time, I was starting to wonder how much there is here. Some of the holes I dug, I was getting between 3 and 4 pieces out. I mean, a lot of the items was just broken up pieces of gold, and that was twisted, and that was unrecognisable, actually. What stands out the most is definitely the cross. It had been twisted all up, folded up, actually, and the cross had actually got stones set in settings. Few of the stones was missing, but all the items had been placed inside the cross, then folded round the settings, so it kept them in place.
As Terry strikes the gold that is about to change their lives forever, for Farmer Fred, it's business as usual.
And he came in the yard and, sit down, he said. And what's the matter now? And he said, sit down. I found a Saxon hoard. And I think my actual word, don't be so silly.
And out my pocket, so I actually gave him some gold pieces to look at, which he looked at, and in dismay, I didn't think, he probably thought I was pulling his leg. Over the coming days, I just couldn't stop the objects coming out of the ground. I mean, it was frightening in the end.
Terry was exhausted.
I was having weird dreams, and all I could see, as soon as I shut my eyes, was pieces of gold with garnets in.
It was like some strange curse of King Midas. It was time for Terry to tell someone. He asked his cousin to ring Birmingham Museum and speak to Duncan Slark, the man in charge of handling all archaeological finds made by the public in the West Midlands.
It was a normal working day, and I was in the office, and my mobile phone rang. Duncan Slark, the chap, announced himself as John and said his cousin had found what he thought was an Anglo-Saxon hoard. Obviously very rare. Okay, well, I think I need some more information about that. So John listed the finds, which included 45 pommel caps. 45 that were gold. Pommels. Gold bar with writing on. The list went on. Pendant. There was immediately a feeling that this was something very important. Okay, I'm really keen to come and have a look. I was thinking that this is a huge find. What do I need to do next?
He set off from Birmingham on a drive of discovery.
So my mind's racing in a lot of directions, to be totally honest, but I needed to think very quickly about making sure I was getting things moving as early as possible.
Because what he was about to find when he actually came to the house was astounding. He was astonished.
There's a box on the table. You know, as an archaeologist, as a finds person, I looked in the box, And it was full of very well bagged finds, but the colour was gold, and every item certainly appeared to be gold.
The only words he could say was, wow. With his eyes wide open and his arms stretched out, when he saw the one box of objects, he was dumbfounded. Then out came another 6 boxes, and disbelief, he just saw it on his face.
When I first met Terry, and I took a photograph of Terry, you could see the responsibility on his shoulders. In his face, he was tired. So I think the physical side of the work, but also the emotional side, because Terry was very clear how significant a find this was.
In his role as a finds liaison officer, Duncan has seen hundreds of valuable antiquities before, but the importance of Terry's treasure find is off the scale. As he drives back into Birmingham with Terry's find safely in the trunk of his car, he formulates a plan of action.
The first thing was to get it secure in the museum, so I brought it in. I also needed to ensure that this was a secret. I needed to deal with what material had come in, make sure that was securely stored, but I needed to think about the next steps. And that was ensuring that what was out there wasn't vulnerable to information getting out about what had been found.
It was like the fuse had been lit. I found the explosives. Duncan lit it, then it was just panic.
Duncan's first call is to Roger Bland, head of portable antiquities and treasure at the British Museum in London.
I first heard about the hoard when the phone went, and my colleague Michael said, "Oh, Duncan's on the phone. He's got this find. I think you ought to know about it." And I said, "Actually, I'm busy at the moment. Could it wait?" And then Duncan emailed through the images, and Michael showed them to me, and that's the stage at which I fell off my chair.
The chief archaeologist for the county of Staffordshire is next on Duncan's list.
Duncan sent me the photographs, and obviously we just saw box after box of sword pommels, hilt collars. We saw the folded cross. You know, you just realise then that actually this is something quite significant.
The next person let in on the secret discovery is Dr. Kevin Leahy, veteran archaeologist and expert in Anglo-Saxon metalwork. He receives a subtly worded email from Duncan.
On getting home, the first thing I did was look at my emails to see if the world still remembered me. Turned on the machine, and up came an email, and this was wow. And then the rest of the line was full of exclamation marks. I opened up the attachments, and I said, wow, too. I'd never seen anything like it. We realised that this was certainly, the biggest find of the 21st century, and I think it's likely to stay that way.
Terry tells the archaeologists he's convinced that there's still a lot more gold to be found in the field. So plans are made to conduct a secret excavation.
Secrecy was important to protect the knowledge about the site. We were worried that with such an important find, the site would get night-hawked.
These so-called nighthawks are the plague of British archaeology. Organised gangs of criminals who illegally trespass on private land, often under the cover of darkness, armed with metal detectors and digging equipment. The They then systematically strip the land of any metal artifacts they can find. These plundered artifacts often make their way onto the open market. It's part of a global business that's worth £3.6 billion a year.
Now obviously the cost of that is not just a financial one. The cost is we lose archaeology because they may dig through the archaeology to get the finds, but also the find is gone and we've got no record of it at all.
So, to prevent the site being night-hawked, a team of local archaeologists are sworn to secrecy and given strict instructions to retrieve all of the remaining artifacts. Within hours of the team arriving on site, they begin to find more gold, helped by the detecting skills of Terry.
Terry was really, really important in the actual field work, and it wouldn't have been done in the time it was done without him pinpointing the finds as before they'd actually been taken out of the ground.
Well, the pieces were virtually everywhere. Some pieces on top, some down 12, 14 inches down, which I was actually pinpointing them for the archaeologists. I was saying what I'd found was equivalent to finding Tutankhamun's treasure. My face must have gone brilliant red, and my hair on the back of my neck all stood up, and it was like electricity going all up and down my spine. I mean, it was just frightening. To dig in the objects up, it was like having a burst pipe. But when you repaired one burst, it was going in other places and it would not stop.
It's absolutely incredible. Never seen anything like that. I've found a few bits of gold in the past when I've been digging, but just the sheer quantity, but also the quality. I mean, even in its dirt-encrusted form, it hadn't been cleaned, it was just in the raw form. It was, the quality of the workmanship was clear. I mean, it blew you away. And we just kept saying the same thing over and over again. We can't believe it, we can't believe it.
Kevin Lee's job during the dig is to start cataloguing and processing the hundreds of new artifacts that are coming out of the ground daily. He's desperate to share the news, so he calls Helen Geek, fellow archaeologist and Anglo-Saxon finds expert. Unfortunately, he catches her at a bad time.
Well, Kevin phoned me one evening about 7 o'clock, and Kevin said, there's been this really exciting find, and I was on my own with 3 small children, and 2 of them were in the bath, and my immediate thought was, oh no, I'm busy, this can't happen now, I haven't got the brain space for it. I suppose I was really panicking. With hindsight, I feel a bit bad. I should have been more of a support to him.
As the excavation progresses, what starts as a couple of metre-square trenches quickly expands to 9 metres by 13 metres. With the trench so big and the site so exposed, they're in plain view of any passing cars. The archaeologists are frightened that their work is about to become big news. But Farmer Fred comes up with a macabre story, keeping his neighbours guessing, and the excavation under wraps for a little while longer.
Well, when they came to me, I said, oh, they're looking for a body. And one person says, do they think you've shot somebody? And I said, oh, that's it, that's how it started. And then everybody who asked me, they're looking for a body. I mean, some half believed it, some didn't believe it at all. When I went down and saw what was being recovered, I saw some pieces with garnets in them, which turned out to be sword pommels. And then when I saw the snakes come out, I think I saw 3 of them come out. And that really intrigued me, that did.
Helen Geek has spent years excavating and analysing thousands of Anglo-Saxon artefacts. But to see a hoard like this being excavated is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
I wanted to see it coming out of the ground because, of course, once it's in the museum, you can see it over and over and over again, but you'll never see again it coming out of the ground. And I absolutely desperately wanted to be there to see it.
After 4 weeks, the excavation comes to an end, with over 1,600 artifacts successfully extracted. The archaeologists are sure that there's nothing left for the Nighthawks to find. But for Kevin Leahy, his work is just beginning.
It was like bailing a leaky boat because, you know, we weren't getting any nearer the end, finishing. We opened bag after bag of finds. Now, Terry found 240 finds. Only it wasn't 240 finds, it was 240 bags of finds. And some of those bags were containing 25 or 30 items, each one of which was an important piece of Anglo-Saxon treasure and had got to be listed.
Well, then I wanted to see more of the stuff to get an idea of what the whole assemblage was like. So I started opening bags, looking at everything as much as I could, very, very fast. Open a bag, back in, out, in, out, in. And I wanted to look at craftsmanship, really, and range of stuff. And every so often I'd say, Kevin, do you know what this is? And he'd say, no, but there's another 6 of them. You'll find them sooner or later. We didn't know what they were, but there were a lot of them. They were clearly common objects that we had never encountered before. I got into the car and I started it and I pulled into the traffic and I thought, ooh, I've just come back from a different planet, the planet on which there are such things as Anglo-Saxon gold hoards. What, have I just been asleep? Did I just dream all that? It was the most extraordinary day, I think, of ever.
It's while cataloguing the artifacts that Kevin realizes the unique and strange makeup of the ancient treasure hoard. Most of the pieces are bits of broken weapons.
An Anglo-Saxon sword hilt is made up of a number of pieces. At the top was the pommel cap. The pommel cap covered the end of the sword's tang, the tang being expanded to lock all of the pieces of the hilt into place. On the sword grip, between the upper and lower guards, were fitted 2 collars. They probably helped reinforce the sword grip, but mainly I think they were there for decoration. Here we've got a pair of hilt plates. These formed the lower guard on a sword blade, which would have stopped the warrior's hand slipping off the grip onto the sharp edges of the blade and also helped protect his hand. In the middle of these 2 plates is a slot through which the sword blade would have passed. This pretty little object, made out of gold and garnets, is something we call a sword pyramid. We get some idea of how they were used by looking at the underside of them. We can see that they're hollow with a bar across the base. This bar probably had a strap fixed round it. The strap was used to secure the sword into its scabbard, preventing it falling out and preventing the owner of the sword drawing the weapon too hastily and getting himself into trouble. It seems strange to find something like this pretty little golden garnet button amongst all the war gear, but it seems likely that buttons like this were fixed to Anglo-Saxon sword scabbards to hold them in place so that the sword and scabbard could be taken off by the warrior without him having to remove his harness.
But the hoard also includes items that are not military. Distinctive Christian crosses, bent and broken, stripped of their jewels. A folded golden strip engraved with a biblical inscription invoking God against the enemy. Rise up, O Lord, and may thy enemies be dispersed, and those who hate thee be driven from thy face. The function of other pieces is less clear. Perhaps this thick gold and garnet artifact once edged the cover of an illuminated manuscript. At the time the hoard was buried, monasteries were producing beautiful books and manuscripts, but no decorated covers have ever been found in Britain. If this is the first, it's of major historical significance.
Some people have said that the hoard hasn't got a context. It has got a context. Its context is itself. Every fragment in there is associated with all the others.
It's finding the relationship between these different types of artifacts that poses the biggest mystery for archaeologists.
Kevin, we both know by now that this hoard is extremely strange. Are we any nearer to being able to understand why?
Well, the strangeness comes in from the selection of material there.
The hoard contains mostly military and religious items, and no everyday female or domestic artifacts at all. Does this strange mixture of items provide clues as to who buried the treasure and why?
I think it's a trophy hoard. I think it's a collection of material gathered together on the battlefield after one or perhaps many battles.
In the 7th century, brutal skirmishes were fought to defend and expand fledgling kingdoms. Rival pagan and Christian kings fought and often died on the battlefield as they struggled for power. The swords, shields, and helmets of dead warriors could become military trophies. But could even the crosses be the spoils from a defeated Christian army?
You could argue that Christian objects could be war gear in the 7th century. Just as you might go into battle waving your sword, if you're a Christian, you might also go into battle waving your very powerful symbol of your cross.
Yes, and we know that religious people suffered in battle. That they too were being killed.
But if the hoard is a trophy collection stripped from a vanquished enemy, it's far from complete.
They've taken away, though, what I think of as being the most militaristic part of the sword. It's the actual blade that does all the damage. Why, if it's a trophy hoard, do you take away the business end?
The hilts of the swords were being stripped off and then the blades reused. Then we've got the helmet fragments, which are amongst the most evocative objects. But the helmets are far from complete.
Yes, obviously a helmet that had one of those cheek pieces is clearly going to have another one.
The Christian crosses have also been subjected to the same brutal treatment, ripped from their mounts and mangled beyond recognition. If the hoard is just one part of a collection of stripped-down war spoils, then the reason why the gold ended up buried with the ironwork missing remains a mystery. It could be as simple as the booty being split up into separate sacks and buried by different people in different places.
Say there were 6 of these sacks. This one had the gold, 4 more sacks with the pattern-welded blades, together with most of the silver. Then there's another sack with the copper alloy, and only this one gets lost and not recovered.
Or maybe the bag of treasure was stolen by just one man, attracted by the lure of gold.
Could it have been an act of theft? Could it have been an individual person who finds himself in control of this rather scary amount of objects, and he hides it for safekeeping, and for some reason he never comes back?
Or maybe the precious gold treasure was buried as part of a long-forgotten pagan ritual. If so, the hoard is the first evidence ever discovered that the Anglo-Saxons did this.
what we've been doing so far is looking at what we know of Anglo-Saxon archaeology and what that tells us about the hoard. But this hoard is so big and so remarkable that I think in the future what we're going to be doing is using the hoard to look outwards and say, what does the hoard tell us about Anglo-Saxon archaeology?
In addition to trying to understand the makeup of the hoard, the team also hoped to understand the mystery behind the craftsmanship of the individual pieces.
Where was the material coming from? The gold, the garnets are another story. And there's how are these things made?
This is a renowned craftsman working in iron. But the skills required to build garnet, but only a few master craftsmen assist. Inside this sword pyramid lies one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of Saxon craftsmanship. The master artisan who made this knew the secret of making his jewelry sparkle. Underneath the carefully inlaid garnets are tiny pieces of gold foil, hardly thicker than the foil you would use today in your kitchen. Each one has been precisely cut to match the shape of the garnets, so no two pieces are alike. Amazingly, each one has on it a pattern of indentations and raised points. Even more amazingly, these patterns are 1/4 of a millimeter apart, barely visible to the naked eye. So how were they made? By hand? With a device that's been lost to history? Only further examination of the treasure will yield the answer. For the moment, Kevin has to keep his questions and mysteries to himself, as the discovery of the treasure is still top secret.
Under the Treasure Act, which came into force in 1997, any objects that are made of gold or silver or any hoards of coins have to be reported to the coroner. Andrew Haig, who was immensely helpful and cooperative, and agreed to stand by, ready to hold an inquest at a date which was going to work with us for making an announcement about the hoard. We knew that when the public got to hear about this find, the interest would be enormous.
A massive hoard of Anglo-Saxon gold worth more than £1 million.
So big, so magnificent, so valuable that experts say they wept when they saw it.
To coincide with the announcement, Birmingham Museum staged a temporary exhibition of some of the most striking artifacts. In just 18 days, 40,000 people queue for hours to see the hoard, while being entertained by the occasional visiting Saxon.
How do you get it onto your head?
It just drops on. It just slops on like that.
With the secret of the hoard now out in the open, the next stage is to work out how much it's worth.
Once the coroner had declared the find to be treasure, the next stage in the process was for it to be valued. And there's an independent committee appointed by the minister who have the role of valuing all finds of treasure that museums wish to acquire. And they work on the basis of valuations that they've commissioned from leading members of the antiquities trade and from leading auction houses.
But how do you value something that's historically priceless?
When I first saw the Staffordshire hoard, I think there was a real sense of wonder and fear and excitement. It was a thrilling experience to see piece after piece, beautiful gold, garnet, jewelled objects being brought out of bags and boxes, one after another. Endlessly, it seemed. It was just quite a scary experience thinking, oh, I can't believe we've got to value 1,600 pieces. And the figure kept getting higher. So it was daunting. when you have a flood of items onto the market, then obviously the value goes down, because how many people out there want an Anglo-Saxon pommel cap or can spend, 20, 30, 40,000 on one? But of course, with this hoard, the other aspect is that it is part of a hoard. Its provenance is a crucial part of it. So then that sort of raises the price again.
With all of the expert valuations done, the Treasure Committee sit behind closed doors to deliberate the total value.
I think it was the longest meeting that I've ever attended. And at the end of that long process, they came out with a recommendation that the hoard should be valued at 3.285 million.
A record for treasure trove. The money will be divided between Terry Herbert, the metal detectorist who found it scattered over a ploughed field last July, and Fred Johnson, the farmer who owns the land. They will each get exactly £1,642,500, tax-free.
I mean, I was gobsmacked, actually, for that amount, and but I agreed. I said, I'll agree if the farmer agrees as well.
I was trying to keep both feet on the ground. Had it been the mega millions that some people were talking about, I think it would have frightened me to death.
The hoard and its discovery have captured the imagination of the great British public, especially in the Midlands, where it was originally found. So it seems only fitting that the hoard should be acquired by the local museums of Stoke and Birmingham. But to acquire it, they first have to raise the money to pay Terry and Fred their share of the reward, £3 million. And they have just 13 weeks to raise it. And once again, thousands queue for hours to see the treasure up close and personal. It appears that the lure of discovering buried treasure still appeals to young and old alike.
It's absolutely fabulous. We always think of the Dark Ages, but the skills that were around in those days, amazing.
Prince Charles has taken a personal interest in the hoard. As an archaeology graduate, he too is eager to find out more about where it came from and to whom it belonged. Perhaps it can be traced back to one of his distant ancestors. Once the funds are raised and the hoard returned to the Midlands, work will really begin on cleaning away the dirt of centuries and to see if any of the current mysteries can be solved or if any new secrets lie in wait.
This is the first stage of the whole conservation treatment now, just in covering what was in the mud blocks.
The conservation process is challenging for something of this size. The first step is really to sort it out. What are we looking at? What materials are there? What condition are they in? So it's all about triage, really. It's understanding what we're dealing with.
Not exactly sure what it is, but it's got some beautiful twisted wire work.
The thing I like about this find is the mystery. The questions we'd like to know the answer to: who did it belong to, and how did it get to where it is?
Right, this is it. This is the piece. It's really seen some damage. Look at it. So what was it?
Probably the most important tool we have is the people that actually do the work first of all. It's the eyes of the conservators that are looking at the material. But alongside that, there's a whole host of other materials, scientific techniques that we can use. We have regular microscopes, scanning electron microscopes, we have Raman spectroscopy, we have XRF, all sorts of techniques that we can bring to bear.
Would you like to just double check that, Marion? Okay. Have you finished with that one? What have we got on this one? It's fine. It's got that teeny tiny little corner, hasn't it? It's just it's very vulnerable, that little rivet pin.
Yes, you tend to try.
Yeah.
We can scan them and we can literally start to put the jigsaw together, because that's what it is a jigsaw of material that needs to be piece by piece put together.
And you're absolutely right, it does fit perfectly.
That's great.
But the key thing about the treatment is it mustn't be prejudicial to the wider study of the material. Whatever we do, we have to make sure that we're not destroying evidence or doing anything that that affects people examining it in the future.
Let's just see what this looks like under the light magnification. You can really see the detail on that. It's lovely. They've done a lot of detective work sticking those pieces together.
The scientists are at the beginning of a long journey to clean and conserve the hoard. Thousands of people-hours over the next 10 years are required to restore the ancient artifacts back to the splendor they enjoyed almost 1,400 years ago. But it's a journey that could never have happened if it wasn't for a man in a field, a gut instinct, and an amazing stroke of luck.
Well, still great detecting, yeah, definitely, because there's other stuff out there to be found. There'll always be stuff in the ground to be dug up. For as long as man's on this planet, there'll always be items in the ground.